If I didn't have my own publishing company, had the song not already been a hit, it might have been different. But I couldn't give somebody half of a song that had already been #1, and that was evident, had already proved.
She's known as country music's angel, but even angels have enemies. Behind Dolly Parton's signature smile and rhinestone gowns is a story you've never heard. A story of betrayal, lawsuits, backstage tension, and feuds that rocked the music world. They smiled in public, praised her in interviews, and hugged her on stage. But off camera, doors were slammed, contracts were broken, and friendships were destroyed. Some tried to control her, others tried to steal her work, and a few said they'd never work with her again. Today, we reveal the 5 biggest celebrity fallouts Dolly Parton has never fully forgiven. And trust me, once you hear what really happened behind closed doors, you'll never look at Dolly Parton the same way again. Before the world saw the glamour, the wigs, and the dazzling stage lights, Dolly Parton was just a little girl from the Smoky Mountains with a dream bigger than her world could hold. Born in a one-room cabin in Locust Ridge, Tennessee, Dolly came from a family of 12 children. Her father couldn't read or write, and her mother had given birth to a dozen kids by the time she was 35. There was no money for luxuries, not even indoor plumbing. So when Dolly sang on the front porch, it wasn't just a hobby, it was survival. By the age of 10, she was performing on local radio. By 13, she'd appeared on national TV. And the day after she graduated high school, she packed her suitcase and headed for Nashville alone. It didn't take long before the industry took notice. In 1967, Dolly scored her first hit, Dumb Blonde, a not-so-subtle message to everyone who underestimated her. But what really changed her life was joining the Porter Wagoner Show, one of the biggest programs in country music at the time. Porter wasn't just a star, he was a gatekeeper. He gave Dolly a national platform, their chemistry was electric, and fans loved their duets. Together, they racked up hit after hit. But what fans didn't see was the tension slowly building behind the scenes. Porter controlled everything, from the songs she sang to the clothes she wore. To the world, they looked like the perfect team, but to Dolly, it was starting to feel like a cage. And when she finally decided to walk away, it didn't just break a partnership. It sparked a feud so bitter, it nearly destroyed them both. Dolly knew leaving Porter Wagoner's show wouldn't be easy. They'd shared a stage, a brand, and years of memories. But by 1974, she'd outgrown the role he wanted her to play. She was ready to be more than just his duet partner. She wanted to carve her own path, write her own story. So, with a heavy heart, she said goodbye. To the public, it seemed graceful. 2 professionals parting ways. But Porter didn't see it that way. He felt betrayed. He'd helped build Dolly's fame, and in his eyes, she owed him. So in 1979, 5 years after she walked away, Porter stunned everyone by filing a $3 million lawsuit against her. He claimed she'd broken their contract. He wanted a cut of her earnings, reimbursement for management fees, and compensation for all the success she'd had since leaving his show. Dolly was heartbroken. This wasn't just a business disagreement, it was personal. She'd always respected Porter even when their relationship became strained. To see him take legal action felt like a knife to the heart. But instead of fighting him in the press, she chose a quieter path. She settled the case out of court, paying what was needed just to move on. No public mudslinging, no counterattacks, just a deep, private wound. She later revealed that the hardest part wasn't the money, it was the realization that someone she once saw as a mentor had turned against her. Dolly said, "We were so bound in emotional ways, he just couldn't hear it when I said I needed to go." That line said everything. This wasn't just a contract dispute, it was a breakup, one that left scars on both sides. But time, as it often does, softened the pain. And years later, when Porter fell ill, Dolly visited him in the hospital. She even inducted him into the Country Music Hall of Fame because despite everything, she still saw him as family. Their story is a powerful reminder. Sometimes the people who help you rise are the same ones who can't handle your success. And for Dolly, that was only the beginning. Dolly Parton had survived lawsuits, heartbreak, and public betrayal. But the next feud didn't come from an old mentor. It came from a fellow star, a woman many expected would become one of her closest musical allies. In the late 1970s, fans were thrilled when three of country music's biggest names, Dolly Parton, Linda Ronstadt, and Emmylou Harris, announced they'd be collaborating. Their voices, so different yet so powerful, promised magic. And in 1987, that magic arrived in the form of Trio, a harmony-rich album that topped charts and won a Grammy. But behind the scenes, things weren't quite so harmonious. Dolly was known for her quick studio style. She could knock out a hit in just a few takes. Linda, on the other hand, was a perfectionist. She'd spend hours tweaking a single vocal line. And Emmylou? She played mediator, trying to keep the peace between two strong-willed legends. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. Dolly later admitted she often felt frustrated in the studio with Linda. She said it felt like Linda lived in the studio, obsessing over details that didn't seem important to Dolly's more instinctual style. And Linda? She didn't hold back either. In interviews, she described Dolly as unreliable, saying she'd cancel sessions, show up late, or put her solo career ahead of the group. Their working styles clashed, their personalities clashed, and soon, what began as musical sisterhood started to unravel. The friction was so intense that their follow-up album, Trio 2, was shelved for years. It wasn't released until 1999, over a decade later. By then, the damage to their friendship was already done. Linda eventually admitted she had no plans to work with Dolly again. She accused her of lacking commitment, of being flaky, and of treating the Trio project like an afterthought. And even though Dolly rarely spoke negatively about Linda in public, her silence spoke volumes. The wounds were deep, and while they later appeared cordial in interviews, fans could sense the lingering chill. It was a reminder that even legends, no matter how iconic, can clash behind closed doors. And for Dolly, the cost of collaboration wasn't just creative compromise, it was a friendship that never fully recovered. But the next feud? It involved someone even bigger. And this time, it wasn't just a disagreement, it was a missed opportunity that changed music history. Dolly Parton had clashed with collaborators before, but nothing prepared her for what happened when Elvis Presley came calling. It was the mid-1970s. Dolly had just released one of her most personal songs, I Will Always Love You. Written as a farewell to Porter Wagoner, the song was soft, heartfelt, and raw. It climbed the charts and became one of her signature ballads. And then she got the call. Elvis Presley, the king himself, wanted to record it. For most artists, this would be a dream come true. Elvis didn't just sing songs, he transformed them into legends. And the idea of him singing I Will Always Love You, it could have been historic. But there was one catch. Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, had a rule. If Elvis recorded your song, he owned half the publishing rights, 50% of everything, forever. To many, that was the cost of greatness, but not to Dolly. She said no. It wasn't about ego, it wasn't about money, it was about ownership, about standing up for her work. That song, she later said, was the most important copyright in my catalog. She admired Elvis, adored his music, but she knew giving in would set a dangerous precedent. If she let one manager take half of her song, others would follow. So she refused. And just like that, the collaboration ended. Elvis never recorded the song. Dolly was devastated, but she never backed down. She later admitted the rejection hurt deeply, not because of the deal, but because Elvis had truly loved the song. And after her decision, the relationship cooled. There was no public feud, but something was lost. Years later, Dolly said she cried after turning down Elvis. It wasn't anger, it was heartbreak. But fate had other plans. In 1992, Whitney Houston's powerful cover of I Will Always Love You turned it into one of the biggest hits in music history. It earned Dolly millions in royalties and brought the song to a new generation. Still, that unrecorded version, the one Elvis never sang, lingered in Dolly's mind. Because sometimes, standing up for yourself means saying no to your heroes. And for Dolly, that no changed everything. But the next feud? It wasn't private, it wasn't respectful, it was a full-on public attack that nearly destroyed her reputation, and this time she fought back. By the time 2008 rolled around, Dolly Parton had built an image nearly untouchable. graceful, kind, scandal-free. She was the rare celebrity who could cross genres, generations, and political lines without ever causing a stir. But then, someone crossed a line so deeply that Dolly, for one of the only times in her career, publicly snapped. That someone was Howard Stern. Known for his crude humor, shock value, and anything for ratings approach, Stern had made a career out of controversy. But in 2008, he took things too far. During one of his show's segments, his team edited together audio clips from Dolly's audiobook, My Life and Other Unfinished Business. They spliced her voice into a fake interview, stitching real words into fake, vulgar, and downright disgusting sentences. The result? A manufactured version of Dolly saying racist slurs, insulting fellow musicians, and making explicit, degrading comments about her own body. It was meant as a joke, but to Dolly and to millions of fans, it was character assassination. For a woman who'd spent decades building a reputation based on dignity, kindness, and class, this felt like a brutal ambush. And unlike most feuds, Dolly didn't stay quiet. She released a rare, deeply emotional public statement, "I have never been so shocked, hurt, and humiliated in all my life. In a blue million years, I would never have such vulgar things come out of my mouth." She even hinted at taking legal action, something nearly unheard of from her. Fans were furious, country stations pulled support for Stern, comment sections exploded with outrage. But Howard, he didn't flinch. He brushed it off, called it satire, and claimed people were being too sensitive. He never apologized, and Dolly, in typical fashion, didn't fire back. She let the storm speak for her. For 15 years, the two didn't cross paths again, until 2023. That year, Dolly shocked everyone by appearing on The Howard Stern Show to promote her genre-blending rock album, Rockstar. It was civil, even respectful, but the tension in the room was unmistakable. Dolly didn't come back for closure. She came to prove a point that no one, not even Howard Stern, could define her legacy. But not all criticisms came from shock jocks. One came quietly from a fellow songwriter who questioned her talent and sparked a war of words Dolly never saw coming. Dolly Parton has survived lawsuits, betrayals, fake interviews, and public scandals. But sometimes the sharpest cuts come not from enemies, but from peers. That's what happened when Jeff Tweedy, frontman of the Grammy-winning alt-country band Wilco, decided to publicly criticize her songwriting. Now, Jeff isn't just some loud critic looking for attention. He's respected, he's thoughtful, and he's known for lyrics that dig deep into emotion and abstraction. But when he was asked about Dolly's work in a radio interview, he didn't hold back. He started by acknowledging her success, "Jolene, I Will Always Love You," and a career that's lasted longer than most artists even dream of. But then came the twist. Tweedy said her lyrics were superficial. He implied that Dolly's songs weren't layered or complex, that they relied too much on catchiness and charisma, not substance. And then he delivered the line that stung the most. She wrote Jolene and I Will Always Love You on the same day. Maybe she should have stopped after Jolene. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't playful. It was a cold dismissal of decades of songwriting. Dolly never publicly fired back. She rarely does. But those close to her say the words didn't go unnoticed. Because to Dolly, songwriting isn't a gimmick. It's her soul. It's how she told her family's stories, her heartbreaks, her fears, her hopes. Every lyric came from somewhere real. And fans, they weren't quiet. They flooded social media defending her legacy. They reminded everyone that Dolly's songs had been covered by icons, crossed genres, and stood the test of time. What Tweedy didn't seem to understand was that Dolly never tried to be mysterious or intellectual in her lyrics. She wrote what people felt. She didn't need metaphors. She didn't need layers. She just needed truth. And that's why her songs endure. Because long after the critics stopped talking, her voice is still playing in living rooms, heartbreak playlists, and wedding aisles around the world. But if there's one thing all these feuds prove, it's this. Behind the big hair, glitter, and grace is a woman who's had to fight again and again, not just to be heard, but to be respected. When you look back at all the people who clashed with Dolly Parton, The controlling mentor, the perfectionist collaborator, the disappointed icon, the shock jock, the critical peer, one thing becomes crystal clear. Dolly's greatest battles didn't happen on stage. They happened behind the scenes, where cameras couldn't see and microphones didn't pick up the tension. She was never loud about her pain. She didn't drag people through the tabloids. She didn't rant in interviews or wage public wars. But make no mistake, she felt every cut. Porter Wagoner tried to control her, then sued her when she broke free. Linda Ronstadt publicly accused her of being unreliable and unprofessional. Elvis Presley's team tried to exploit her, and when she said no, she lost the chance to work with a legend. Howard Stern humiliated her for laughs, splicing her voice into something filthy and vile. And Jeff Tweedy, a fellow songwriter, dismissed her craft as shallow, almost like it didn't matter. But here's the thing no one expected. Dolly never begged for respect. She earned it, quietly, consistently, and with her head held high. While others threw punches, she wrote songs. While the media speculated, she built an empire. And while critics questioned her place in music, she outlasted all of them. She turned heartbreak into ballads. She turned betrayal into lessons. And she turned every feud, every insult, every dismissal into fuel. She didn't fight back with lawsuits or interviews. She fought back with art. And that's what makes her different. Most stars crumble when faced with this much conflict. Dolly didn't. She didn't just survive it, she transcended it. Because for every person who tried to dim her light, she shined brighter. And while some of those wounds never fully healed, Dolly Parton proved something very few in the industry ever do. You don't have to be cruel to be powerful. You don't have to play dirty to win, and you don't have to destroy others to protect yourself. Sometimes, grace is the strongest weapon of all. Dolly Parton's story is more than rhinestones and chart-topping hits. It's a survival guide dressed in sequins, one built on kindness but forged in fire. Behind every warm smile was a decision to stay silent when others would have shouted. Behind every hit song was a heartbreak she refused to let define her. And behind every feud, there was a woman standing firm, not for revenge, but for respect. She's been underestimated, she's been mocked, she's been sued, slandered, and sidelined, but somehow she turned it all into gold. She didn't have a famous family to prop her up. No viral moment launched her career. She started with nothing but talent, grit, and a refusal to let the world tell her who to be. And that's what makes these feuds so revealing. They weren't just tabloid gossip or petty rivalries. They were tests. Tests of patience, tests of pride, tests of strength. And Dolly passed every one of them, not by fighting dirty, but by staying true to who she is. Because in an industry built on image, she never lost her identity. In a business that often rewards cruelty, she chose compassion. And in a world that demanded she shrink herself, she only grew. So, the next time someone says Dolly Parton is just a country singer, remember this: she's one of the most powerful women music has ever seen, not because she played the game, but because she changed the rules. And through it all, she never stopped singing. Which of these feuds surprised you the most? Was it the heartbreak with Porter, the near collab with Elvis, or the shocking stunt by Howard Stern? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. And if you love deep dives into the untold sides of your favorite stars, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because next time, we're going even deeper.